But you have written evidence that goes against human elevation or evolution is reported only by crackpots.
Now this is one of the standard techniques that the scientific community tries to use against anybody that reports something that goes against their ideas. They try to label them in a derogatory way without actually discussing the facts.
The worst thing to call somebody is crazy is dismissive. I don't understand this person, so they're crazy. That's bullshit. These people are not crazy, they're strong people. Maybe the environment is a little sick.
There are people who believe that they have a God-given right to rule over others. They believe that their outward appearance is superior to all others. They harbor selfish ambitions to be rich and to have power over what they describe as common people. They lie, cheat, steal, strangle, stab and slash their way to power. They believe that their actual willpower, what the British occultist Aleister Crowley described as the will of Thelema, the royal will, must be obeyed.
Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
The conspiratorial view of history is the correct view of history. Conspiracy to grab property, conspiracy to make illegal profits, and conspiracy to assassinate has been the driving force behind the royal political elite for thousands of years.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you.
He should be well punished for his sins.
What truth?
The punishment prescribed by law is terrible indeed. If the executioner takes care to exact the extremity of pain.
He is no ordinary traitor. Tell Richard Topcliffe to create some new device.
The so-called royal family which triumphed is basically German. They are seated on almost every throne in Europe. They are the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha-Battenberg bloodline, which often intermarries with the Hesse-Kassel German nobility and claim Jewish descent from the royal house of David in ancient Israel.
Some group that we should know what they're doing because they are so influential, and when they enter into private or secret or unwritten agreements among themselves as to what they're going to do to influence politics and influence banking, they in fact do influence politics and banking on the basis of the agreements made at this hotel in Switzerland, Nicole?
See you at dinner at Boulay. That's where they'll be talking about this, right?
Soon as who are they? Who are they?
Well, they're CEOs, they're former CEOs, they're former politicians.
The former chairs of the Fed.
Look,
they're David
Rockefeller.
Rockefeller.
There's a few heads of royal families.
Yeah, okay, there might be good ideas that come out of this. Why not share knowledge? Okay. Why not build relationships that at some point in time might be able to help you?
Hang on, Nicole. The Queen of Spain, John D. Rockefeller, Google CEO Eric Schmidt, former United States President, which one will be there? Bill Clinton.
Let me tell you something. I'll tell you a couple of stories about fraud. The Bohemian Club, as you say, the Bohemian Club? That's where all those rich Republicans go up and stand naked against redwood trees, right? I've never been to the Bohemian Club, but you ought to go. It'd be good for you. Get some fresh air.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret.
What have Herbert Hoover, Art Linkletter, Jack London, and Richard Nixon all had in common? Well, they've all been members of the exclusive all-male Bohemian Club in California, where every year at this time the elite from around the country get together for 2.5 weeks of fun and games. Steve Shepard has this special assignment report.
More than 2,000 members of San Francisco's exclusive and all-male Bohemian Club have once again descended on Northern California. These men will spend most of the month of July encamped on some 2,700 acres of pristine and privately owned redwood forest. Forest very much like this. The place is called Bohemian Grove, and it's located just 80 miles north of San Francisco. The Grove is the Bohemian Club's summer retreat, and its facilities are hidden beneath lush forest canopy extending south from the banks of Sonoma County's Russian River. For more than a century, the camp has been a place where club members and guests from all across America gather to relax. The retreat is divided into dozens of small camps, the most prominent of which is called Mandalay. Among its members are businessmen like Leonard Firestone and Edgar Kaiser, and political figures like Gerald Ford, Henry Kissinger, William French Smith, and George Shultz. President Reagan, Vice President Bush, and Defense Secretary Weinberger are members of other camps. Richard Nixon is a Bohemian, and so are high-ranking executives of such companies as Eastern Airlines, Standard Oil of Indiana, and Bank of America. For the most part, the men of Bohemian Grove are over 50, highly successful, and, according to many employees, politically conservative.
Now but these slaves, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign, ye fools and priests.
They raise their children without love or compassion, breeding each successive generation to be at the head of a military establishment who keep an angered peace by use of fear, surveillance, and war. Contrary to what the royal spin doctors have written in the school history books, Queen Victoria was not popular. She was often hissed in public, and there were no less than 7 attempts to kill her. Keeping the populace ignorant, using adults and children alike as virtual slaves in workhouses, providing no adequate protection against hypothermia, working every man and woman to exhaustion, and imposing a crippling poll tax was the modus operandi of Queen Victoria and all her relatives sitting on the thrones across Europe. So-called Victorian values allowed children to be used as slave labor.
Think of the staggering symbols that the Indians produced. I mean, the dancing Shiva, for example, we've never produced anything as comprehensive as this. The dancing Shiva, those little bronze statues, it is the Shiva with 4 arms dancing with 1 foot raised. And, well, I mean, I'll go into the details, they're really quite extraordinary. It's, the figure stands within a great circle, sort of halo, which has flames going out, I mean, the symbols of flames. And this is the circle of mass energy, space, time. I mean, this is the material world, the great world of the all-embracing material world with its flames. Within this, Shiva dances. He's called Nataraja, the lord of the dance. And he dances, he's everywhere in the universe. I mean, this is his dance. The manifestation of the world is called his lila, his play. It's, I mean, he sends his rain upon the just and the unjust, and He's not, he's beyond good and evil, of course. It's all an immense manifestation of play. He has this long hair, which is the hair of the yogin, contemplative, and it streams out to the limits of the universe, you see. Therefore, this sort of yogic knowledge of this contemplation includes everything. He has 4 arms. In the upper right arm, he holds a little drum, which is the drum which summons things into creation. You beat upon this drum and things come into existence. In his left arm, he holds a fire, which is what destroys everything. He both creates and destroys. His lower right hand is held up in this attitude, which means be not afraid, in spite of everything, it is all right. The other hand points down at his feet, and one foot is planted squarely on the back of a repulsive dwarf, this infinitely powerful dwarf called Muyalaka, I think his name is, who is the ego, and he has to break the back of the ego, you see. What he's really pointing at is the other foot, which is raised, and this means this foot is raised against gravitation and is the symbol of spiritual contemplation. The whole thing is there, you see. I mean, the world of space and time and matter and energy, the world of creation and destruction, the world of psychology. I mean, how do you get out of this? I mean, if you don't break the back of the ego, you're lost. And if you don't practice contemplation, there will be no liberation for you. I mean, we don't have anything remotely approaching such a comprehensive symbol, which is both cosmic and psychological and spiritual. I mean, it is really most unfortunate that we have such miserable symbols. It's part of the regular Hinduism, but it is specifically Shivaite. And then one of the manifestations, of course, is called Bhairava of Shiva, who is also dancing, but he dances in cemeteries. And I mean, to remind us that the dance of life isn't always very jolly. I mean, that he dances just as much in misery and death as in life and elation. And this has to be accepted. And of course, again, it's only by the lifted foot that we can accept it. I mean, it actually is completely compatible with the modern scientific idea. I mean, it includes the world, you see, of mass, energy, space and time. And the idea of the infinite energy dancing timelessly and forever through this world, dancing through human mentality too. I mean, that the world is felt to be, of course, a kind of outrage, because the play goes on even inside ourselves, although we are sentient beings, and yet the hand is raised, everything is finally all right, in spite of everything, if, as Buddha says, I show you sorrow and the ending of sorrow. The ending of sorrow is putting your foot on the back of the dwarf and raising the other foot in against gravity into the state of contemplation. I mean, the whole thing is there, stated in this single, extremely elegant. I mean, these Shiva images from the south of India are very, very elegant. They're most beautiful pieces of sculpture, the best of them. But it's a shame we don't have any good symbols like this to remind us of who we are and of what we can do about it, if anything. No, we're very, very poor in it. I mean, we have some of the Christian symbols. The symbol of the cross is fairly good, but it doesn't take into account the sort of cosmic side of life. I mean, it doesn't take into account mass, energy, space and time, which is essential. It doesn't take into account, I mean, as it stands, it doesn't take into account the importance of contemplation. No, it's, I mean, there are other symbols, of course, within Christianity which do, but a single comprehensive symbol like the Shiva symbol we do not have, and it's very unfortunate. This whole business of the organized manipulation of symbols is, I mean, the human mind is a symbolific instrument. I mean, it exists to manufacture symbols, to turn immediate experience into symbols for the purpose of managing it in a fairly convenient way. The question is, can we get on with fairly scientific symbols, realistic symbols, and then concentrate on the immediate experience? I don't know. I mean, I simply don't know whether this is possible as a sort of general attitude towards the world. I think it's certainly possible in isolated individuals, but whether in fact it will ever turn out to be something which appeals to great numbers of people, I have no idea.
Now, Professor Hawking, in the very last paragraph of your book, you say that if we discover a complete theory of the universe, then it should in time be understandable in broad principle to everyone and not just to a few scientists. And when that happens, all of us will be able to start discussing the why rather than the how. And I quote, "If we find the answer to that, it would be the ultimate triumph of human reason, for then we would know the mind of God." Do you think that God can intervene in the universe as he wants, or is God too bound by the laws of science?
The question of whether God is bound by the laws of science is a bit like the question, can God make a stone that is so heavy that he cannot lift it? I don't think it is very useful to speculate on what God might or might not be able to do. Rather, we should examine what he actually does with the universe we live in. All our observations suggest that it operates according to well-defined laws. These laws may have been ordained by God, but it seems that he does not intervene in the universe to break the laws, at least, not once he had set the universe going.
Thanks for choosing Ancient Revelation, your #1 Ancient Investigations channel. We are sorry, all of our operators are busy at the moment. Please subscribe and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.